Sorry to laugh, but all I could see in the background while everyone was watching that was like, Kevin going, "Oh, when's this ever going to end?" It's a new look to the YEV podcast that people might notice if they're watching YouTube. But welcome everyone to the YEV podcast. YEV, Kevin.
Why not?
Why the hell not? So we are here to talk about wireless charging. It's a topic that I'm really excited about, certainly from the future point of view. And there is a lot going on at the moment. So I thought it'd be good maybe if we could touch upon it and see if we get some comments in there, see if anyone's got some great ideas and that sort of thing. I believe Alex is jumping on as well shortly. He's just dealing with family things at the moment. But
yeah, the joys of kids.
Lots of them. Dean, you still not sent me your address for your t-shirt for winning the competition. Send it over, chargeheads@gmail.com. So wireless charging, let's just give you the ChatGPT definition. So wireless charging is known as inductive charging. It uses electromagnetic fields to transfer energy between two objects, in this case charging pad for your EV. Now, as a lot of people will know, that is not common practice at the moment, but I'm sure everyone can feel that if you can just, pull into your driveway or pull in, whether you're in your vehicle, your car, your van, your truck, how much easier that would be. So how does it work? So there's a charging pad below. This is Alex just jumping on. Let's just add him now. And hi Alex. And basically there's a receiver coil at the bottom of the EV, and that helps charge the vehicle, and the energy transfer occurs when the car is over the pad. I'm just explaining wireless charging as basics for us all, Alex. So there's companies out there like Witricity, Puggless Power and Halo at the moment, and the pros are, like I mentioned before, really, really convenient. Safety, if you're thinking about charging leads, could be trip hazards, if they're still charging leads there, because a lot of people seem to be chopping them off for £30 each for whatever reason. Times are hard, obviously, or there's some real big haters out there. They're risking themselves for jail or what have you. Potential for automation. Obviously, there's a big subject with driverless cars and how will they charge. So having a wireless charging pad would certainly solve all of those issues. And obviously no need for the big bulky chargers that you see when you pull up to the DC charging. And there's obviously there are benefits, but there are challenges. The cost, of course, efficiency. Now this is talked about quite often. So there is a loss of energy between wireless charging up to 15%. Although there is a really good case study of Nottingham City Council. I was hoping to have Ian on, Ian Whitaker, who was involved in that tonight, but he was busy drinking and watching football, which is completely understandable if you're into that. Compatibility, making sure you've got a vehicle that can wireless charge is important, a bit like your phone. I've just had a phone upgrade after an old one for a long time, and I could certainly not do without wireless charging anymore. And so compatibility could be an issue. And then install, as it needs to be done by a specialist. Applications, residential, public charging, and the opportunity for dynamic charging. So when we're talking about dynamic charging, if there is, let's say, 8 spaces, if one vehicle pulls up, it can take the full charge of whatever that wireless charger can do. And then another one pulls up, it can start to spread, to divvy out the energy between the vehicles. So you've got a certain amount of energy and it divvy it up dynamically depending on the state of charge of the battery and many other factors, heat, etc. So there's a little intro into wireless charging. Thanks for everyone who's joined so far. Feel free to like and subscribe and share. Kevin, what's your thoughts on wireless charging? Have you had any conversations about it recently?
Well, actually, when I did my first EV rally, there was actually, I think it might have been one of the councils were experimenting with Renault Zoe that had wireless charging, and they showed how it worked. They opened it up. It is literally just a hole in the ground. So, I mean, that's one of the inconvenient things with fitting it. You do need to kind of dig a reasonably big hole because all the stuff you see above ground is generally then hidden under the ground. I mean, but the number of questions people brought up with it, like if your cat walks over it, will it get cooked? Because it's like, and there's the usual things. with it? And, you know, does it generate heat? Is it a fire risk and stuff like that? I mean, all those things are no different really to your mobile phone. I mean, I think it adds convenience because, I mean, as early adopters to EVs, I mean, Alex still experiences this, we started off with a untethered charger because you didn't know what type of plug was going to be the end, whether it was going to be type 1 or type 2. And the next step was to move to tethered because it's the convenience, isn't it? Because it's actually more inconvenient to plug both ends of your cable in than just unwind your cable and put that. I mean, this is just the next step in convenience, isn't it? Where you just drive over your charging square. But I mean, the other thing is, I suppose it does require a certain degree of driver skill because I have seen the way some people park, and possibly lining up over your wireless charging pad might be a challenge.
Is it on yet? Yeah. I get it. Alex, what's your thoughts on wireless charging?
It seems to be one of those technologies that's been a bit. It's kind of followed the EV thing in a similar way to hydrogen. Ironically, I know they're obviously two very different technologies, but it's one of these things that's always been talked about, but not really kind of caught on. The areas that I've always thought would be quite interesting is, I mean, whether fully electric or plug-in hybrid is police pursuit cars, where you see those little kind of raised areas on the side of the motorway. You know, once you get to the point where you get kind of heavily electrified police cars, where you could pull up on the side of there, get a top up while you're waiting, but you wouldn't have to unplug anything to just set off straight away. Taxi ranks is the other one where people talk about it a lot. I wonder whether fleets and so on is quite, in general, are quite such a convenient place for it. Autonomous vehicles, yes, certainly is an interesting one, but a lot of people are sort of doing stuff with double shifting vans and so on and things like that, where you probably want a faster charge, even if you've got to spend a few more seconds plugging it in. But yeah, I mean, BMW was offering it on plug-in hybrids like 7 or 8 years ago, but you have to fit a load of additional gubbins on the bottom of the car to make it work and so on. So it's never really caught on. And that's the other thing where you do want that kind of, you don't want to have a type 1 in a world full of type 2s, do you? Standards wise, especially considering if you have that with a tethered wall box and you go from a car that needs one to the other, you're swapping a box on the wall. I mean, I know it's not cheap. If you've got that on your driveway, you're digging the driveway up, aren't you? So yeah, it could work well. It could work well for kind of residential charging at some point, but it's still at relatively slow speeds compared to kind of the faster end of the charging spectrum. So
it's funny you mentioned, Kevin mentioned about holes. You know, there's certainly plenty of holes in the roads at the moment. I remember seeing someone commenting on the socials or something like that saying, you know, wireless charging would be perfect. There's so many holes everywhere already. Just pop in the holes, you know. And I mean, you could argue it's a great opportunity if the government actually do want to sort out the roads, you know, maybe actually having some development into wireless charging in certain areas where the roads are that bad is the perfect opportunity right now. But as ever, cost comes into it. They're broke, we're broke, and it's not ideal. But obviously there are those motorways out there, aren't there, in Europe with regards to charging highways where they can benefit from charging as they're on the move. But I don't think the power is all that there yet. As Roland mentioned, it's perfect for taxi ranks. Absolutely, yeah, definitely. And of course, as he's mentioned as well, buses along the route stops. But I'm really, really interested that I just think that wireless charging, I mean, if they can really crack that in terms of getting something that is simple, that is cost effective, then that just seems to be an absolute no-brainer to just to make charging even more convenient. I mean, I don't find it inconvenient because I just charge at home. I don't wait 5-10 minutes at a petrol station. I'll plug in at home, job done, because I've got obviously the wall box at home. So I think it is a really good opportunity at the moment to be able to start putting it out there. But yeah, do you guys think that it really will be the future of charging?
I don't know. I think it's going to be in certain use cases. I mean, the ideal would be is if you could do it large scale and some of the roads had it in. So you could be traveling along a motorway and then that would be like they've talked about with trucks with the overhead ones. I mean, it's a similar technology, isn't it? If they could do that wirelessly and you just stay in that lane and it can charge your car while you're going along, But I mean, when you think of the speeds of the type of roads you're going to be doing it, it's a pretty long stretch of charging you'd have to do if you're going at 60, 70 miles an hour. Because that's like a mile every minute. So you're not going to get much charge in a minute.
It's a bit like the solar panels on the cars, isn't it? Where they were never intended to fully charge the car, but they just add a little bit as you're going along and just enable you to just stretch the range rather than actually to kind of getting any kind of meaningful, gain back. It's just enabling, especially for lorries and stuff. And they're talking for trucks and about having effectively like a range extender type setup. In terms of having a combustion engine as a generator, but then also kind of filling in by having having either overhead or underground cables that underground pads that transmit energy to the vehicle as it's driving, and then you're just reducing your use of the petrol engine to kind of keep it going and so on. But I mean, it's a huge amount of work. You can imagine digging up all of the strategic road network in the UK and adding that sort of thing, or to add it in any meaningful sense where it's worth that investment. I mean, even digging up short stretches of the inside lane of a motorway is going to be absolutely catastrophically expensive. So I just don't.
Sorry, go on, mate.
No, just from my point of view, I don't see the dynamic stuff taking off for a while. I think that's
I think it really needs to be focused on the full self-driving sort of AI type transport. Your buses, like Kevin mentioned, taxis, as Roland mentioned as well, because if it's going to be automated, that just seems to be the most logical step. If there's not a physical human being to plug it in, that just seems to be the best use case. Mod Scotsman, we did talk about the losses right at the beginning, so it's up to 15%. The case study that I mentioned right at the beginning of this was WICET, WICET, .co.uk if you want to check out the actual case study. And this was a demonstration project funded by OZEV, one of Innovate UK's portfolio street wireless charging. They were using electric hackneyed carriages, so the taxi example. And I don't think the losses were actually that bad. It was still sort of in the 90s. And if you think that the efficiency of a DC charger, the average tends to be sort of 92 to 94, 95%. So there is just as much loss in actually having a normal charger anyway. So I think the losses isn't, although it's not perfect, I don't think it's actually as much of a concern as people make out. Good future idea, but let's get more cheaper and faster chargers in now. Those bays could then be updated in the future. No, absolutely. I think the focus definitely needs to be on the taxis and the buses and the more kind of autonomous vehicles, which does seem to be, you look at the Tesla taxi cab. Don't know of any buses, any full self-driving buses yet, but we do seem to see quite a few in motor shows and things like that, don't we?
The electric ones seem to be using like a kind of pantograph system where you pull up the charger and you have a thing that kind of touches on the contacts it on the roof, don't you? So.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, the WICET case study was around 90 to 92%, which it's pretty good, really, if you think about it.
I mean, it's interesting as well looking into, because I know one of the concerns that's coming out at the moment. I did a little bit about standards on this a year, 18 months ago, reporting out. It was a study carried out, I think it was Sweden, and they were looking into electromagnetic radiation into the environment because of this. And actually, the pads themselves are not the issue. It's the kind of it's some of the other equipment that's around it and so on. They're not. They won't interfere with things like pacemakers and so on. But they're saying that the frequencies at which they operate, if you have an inefficient connection on those, there's potential for that to interfere with kind of certain frequencies of radio transmission and things like that, potentially even systems within the car. So they've been starting to study that as well. I mean, there's standards to make sure that it doesn't, like as I say, doesn't kill people with pacemakers, but some of the other kind of the wider knock-on effects of this are starting to be looked into now, which is quite interesting. So there's people, there's an appetite for it, and there's a kind of people trying to set the ground rules and getting it moving. But for me, it's always seemed, as you say, it's something that seems secondary to me to getting the good quality wired charging in place. You can kind of layer that on afterwards. I mean, there's no vehicles that really support it without adding things on. So the kind of the need for it is not massive at the moment. You're selling people stuff to convert vehicles, aren't you? So
yeah.
The main thing I see it would be a benefit with is for people with disabilities, because you've all been to rapid charging stations and the cables are quite unwieldy with the really fast chargers. And it's a limiting factor of what you can do with those. A lot of it is physics, because literally it has to be that thicker cable. They've made them thinner than they are with liquid cooling and things like that, because obviously copper is expensive. But there is a limitation. If you've got a disability, it could be quite hard to put that in. And that's where wireless charging will help, especially with a lot of the charging stations being unmanned, like your traditional petrol station. There was a button that people could press and they could get assistance. But lots of charging stations aren't like that. So that's where I think it could benefit as well with, helping those with disabilities as they move to electric, because you can't necessarily lift a big heavy cable into your charging point.
No, that's a really good point. I suppose one argument for that would be just the higher voltage. Higher voltage, smaller, thinner cable will help with that. But then I was thinking the payment. I mean, how would you sort out the payment? Would that be, is there any way of connecting? Would it be like a Bluetooth signal? I don't know if that's actually been played around with or spoken about yet, or whether, I don't actually have any knowledge or any information. There's no information out there at the moment for that. It does seem like the wireless charging subject is just quite small at the moment. But I was really interested to talk about it, but maybe we can branch off and talk about other things around charging and charging experiences, just to help navigate what might be the better solutions out there. We've talked about taxis and we've talked about buses, LCVs and lorries. There does seem to be at the moment legislation. It's really weird. I found this out this week. The LCVs on their 45-minute break, and Alex might have a steer on this, on their 45-minute break, if they're charging, that is counted as a break. But if it's a HGV, 45-minute, if they're charging, does not count as a break. So once they've done the 45 minutes charge, they still need to have a break. That just sounds bonkers to me. Did you know about that?
No, I didn't know about that. No, that does seem a little bit odd.
It's weird, because vans is like, that is a break, and then HGV, no, it's not classed as a break if you're charging. It's really odd.
Which case then do you hit some blurred lines with the larger electric vans? Because once you get over 3.5 ton gross vehicle weight, you can drive them on a car license, but you still have some of the HGV rules apply, and you have all of them apply if you're in Europe. So in terms of rest hours and things like that, I think it rings a bell, because it's been a while since I've written about driver's hours, but they're quite confusing in terms of some of the things that you are and you aren't allowed to do, because it is to do with that thing with actually having a complete break in terms of operating the vehicle, isn't it?
Because until you've got a HGV that is okay to charge on its 45-minute break, if that's not possible, then the electric HGV charging and electrification of transport is that much harder, and it's not exactly easy to begin with. Dean's just mentioned there is a German guy that's recently started putting up videos up about him driving electric HGVs. Yes, I've seen that. I can't remember who shared that with me. That was quite an interesting one. It all seems to be quite positive. I think, Dean, I didn't watch it all, but as you mentioned, it is very interesting. If people didn't know, I'm very much kind of in that scene with Dynamon, who I work with because we are involved in the ZHID project, zero emission heavy goods infrastructure, which is heavily funded by the government. So there's subsidized electric trucks, subsidized infrastructure. But as part of this charging network, they have to share each other's charging. So there'll be DAFs, Volvos, all sorts of different brands sharing each other's charging hubs, which I think is a great idea. It's a good way of starting to really build the electric HGV highway, because I think that the more and more conversations I'm having this year around charging and fleet charging, it's all about shared charging, not necessarily public charging, because you can't potentially put in a rigid HGV or a bigger LCV at a normal, DC charging site, whether it's GridServe or Tesla, what have you. So there needs to be more places that the fleet vehicles can charge, and that is starting to develop now. Although it's infancy, it's really starting to develop, which is great. Just need to get that cost down.
A lot of those bays are designed around, aren't the cars, and whether that's height restrictions or width of bays or sheer looking like a nuisance. You know, if you turn up in one of those large, like an e-transit or something, and you're taking up a whole bay, and someone's trying to park in a bay next to you, and their charging port,
all the bays.
Yeah, it's kind of if you've then got a liveried van with, you know, your postal company, your parcel company, or, you know, your business is down the side of it, if you're perceived to always be at this charging point causing a nuisance for drivers that use it a lot, that can be, people are not very rational dealing with these things. They don't see the bigger picture, do they?
Michael, who's part of the modified EV group, has actually mentioned that he's seen the highways. Tell us more, Michael. Where did you see them? Do you know what speed they were charging and what vehicles were using them? That would be really interesting to know about. Dean, he loves it. His biggest issue is the available space. He has to charge his HGV as the bays are too small, so he has to unhitch his trailer a lot of the time. However, in Europe, there are these public charging for big HGVs called Milence. That's a CPO, charge point operator in Europe. So there are dedicated HGV charging stations in Europe. UK, I think there's only one, and I think it's a Shell charging station. Or it hasn't been made yet, but it's just about to be built. So I know that we've gone from wireless to fleet charging, but it just organically went that way. But yeah, no, Mike, I'm really interested. Here we go. It's got another one. Here we go. Swedish authorities have unveiled plans to convert a highway into a permanently electrified thoroughfare as the European Union works towards its zero emission goal. Thank you, Michael. So, I mean, it's a bit far for me to go and charge the Tesla. Not that it would work because it hasn't got the doobies underneath. But I wonder how they're charging people for that. I bet it. What do you reckon, guys? Do you reckon it's free to start with, and then they'll start putting the thumb screws in?
Yeah, usually these trials are free, aren't they, to kind of work out the technology and stuff. I mean, going back to the truck scene, there's another comment about charging them. Is you've got the MCS charging standard, and I mean that's designed to work around truckers' brakes. So if they can't be on brake, you know, it's there. I mean, when you look at it, I mean that's going to be the hard thing for wireless with big stuff like that. When you think, you're talking about megawatt charging. I mean, it's a scary enough thought thinking some person's going to plug in a 1 megawatt cable, which is a ludicrous amount of power.
Malcolm's just put from Electric Trucker YouTube channel. The problem is if he's charging during his break, he can't move his truck off the charger until his break is finished. Otherwise, his break time has to restart. God, that's frustrating. It could be.
That's where load balancing can come in, though, isn't it? Because once his truck's finished, you have multiple connectors there, and it'll automatically just switch to one of the other connectors.
I think the problem is we talk about dynamic charging and all the rest of it, but you know, like Kempower have their satellites, so they've got the main charging, what are they called, power stations or something like that, and then they've got the separate satellites, and then it distributes the power where it needs to be, and those satellites can take a megawatt charging cable and plug. But the problem is a lot of these chargers aren't actually dynamic, and obviously intelligent dynamic chargers are that much more money. There are, from my knowledge, from when I used to do charging, you know, Alpatronic have like a 400 kilowatt charge, and then they've got stacks of 100 kilowatts. So that 400 kilowatt, if someone's plugged in, if it can take 400, it will do 400. If someone else plugs in, it could split it 200 or 300, 100, depending on the vehicles and the heat of the battery, the state of charge of the battery. It does get quite complicated. Whereas Kempower, instead of 100 kilowatt blocks, they've got 50 kilowatt modules that can split out 25 kilowatts each. So if their power station, which is the triple cabinet, that's what they're called, cabinets, they've got 600 kilowatt cabinet, they've got 25 kilowatt increments that they can share between all the satellites, essentially, which is great, but it's more expensive. And it always comes at a cost. It seems like there's all this technology that's there, but it's always the cost, isn't it? Always the cost.
The trouble, I guess, with trucks and bays being occupied by drivers that can't move because they're still on their brake and so on, is that you end up with equipment being, I say, hogged, unintentionally hogged. You almost need somebody or some way of system of that will allow those vehicles to maybe autonomously drive, or you have an attendant there who can move them off the chargers, who is not on brake and is not being restricted by those sorts of things. I mean, that's a whole other issue in itself, isn't it? That if you have a system where you need to know that you can turn up at these chargers, they're free, and you can get back on the road in 45 minutes. It's a costly thing to miss out on that, isn't it?
Mm. And as Roland's just mentioned, it's probably be intelligent charging using vehicle authentication and direct charging to your account, a bit like Tesla, I guess, or RFID reader like European motorways. And Michael's just put in a very big red herring here, which is, I know it's changing the subject, but how's the Mountain Pass performance suspension, Tim? Very jealous. I bet the ride is as smooth as hell. I don't know how smooth hell is, but it's really good, mate. Really good. It's really strange. So just if anyone's interested, I've gone from IBAC lowering spring standard Tesla Model 3 long range suspension to Mountain Pass performance comfort coilovers, which are height adjustable but not rebound adjustable, and these Mountain Pass performance coilovers are based on KW suspension, so it's a really good quality brand. And it's really strange. So it's gone from slightly firmer dampers, even though they're comfort, but the springs are softer and more progressive. So it does actually feel really sporty, even though they're comfort. But yeah, the ride is so much better. But that'll be coming in a video on Wednesday. Sorry for the red herring people, but he did ask the question, and we're here for you. So ask us questions. Sorry.
You'll be on full air ride suspension next, Tim.
I couldn't afford that, mate. But that would have been good to drop it on the ground.
You'll have the first Tesla low ride that you can jump and bounce and stuff.
There's one in America, mate. There's one in America.
They're already on it.
There's one in America, and it's got all the pinstripes and everything else. But one would hope that, when it's bouncing, like when you bounce, the battery don't fall out the bottom. Let's plug it back in. There we go. Sorry, guys. Right. So Malcolm's just put wireless charging would solve the problem of cables being cut. That's a bloody good point, Malcolm. Literally nailed it. Question to you all. Do you chaps remain inside your vehicle while it's charging? As I've seen some questions as to safety. Any thoughts? And yesterday I have 99% time remained in mine. That's a really good question, actually.
Sometimes. Chaps? Not. No, I mean, I generally speak, if I'm with the kids, we use it as a leg stretch opportunity. So we'll just plug the car in and just wander off and go and get some food and, comfort break and all the rest of it. If I'm on my own, sometimes I'll just sit there and doom scroll for 20 minutes or something, or wander off and go and get the loo and get a coffee as well. So depends on the visit and how I'm feeling, really, and whether I won't be bothered. If it's a cold day and I've got the heaters on, it's quite nice to just sit in the car and, as I say, scroll on my phone for a bit. So
yeah, I've never really thought about it. I just sit in it. I'm not really expecting my car to catch fire when I'm in it.
I always like I don't know what noises your cars make, guys, but my Tesla makes like donk noises, like the battery's filling with air. I haven't seen it steaming yet, because you see those Teslas that when they get quite hot, they start letting off steam, which is really scares people. I've seen other cars do it, but I don't tend to stop to charge. I tend to charge when I'm stopped. So pull in.
I mean, Alex will probably remember this. The Zoe used to get quite noisy when it got warm with charging, because it was air cooled, so it would open another vent and it would sound like a jet taking off as it was cooling the batteries.
It was a high-pitched whine that it used to make, like a kind of a constant, and it would make a higher-pitched whine the higher the power that you use. If you were on a full-on rapid charger, it would you get this kind of quite an annoying high-pitched whine the whole time you were using it.
Yeah. And I bet, probably like me, you could tell the charging speed by the whine eventually. You could say, oh, that's going 22 because it's a 22.
I used to feel guilty getting back here after a run from St Albans, get back here after midnight and plug it in. And during the summer, you could see all the neighbours having their windows open. You got this kind of coming from the car. It's the only car that's made that noise. It must be because of the way the charger works. And
so I always think if you're plugged into a rapid charger, like, I don't know, 200, 250, if you plug in and it's giving you circa 150-ish kilowatts, 100, once it dials down a bit, go for a coffee and a toilet, takes 10 minutes, about the same time as it takes you to pull into the station, sit there, stand there filling up, then go and get your stuff, pay for it and stuff, and that sort of thing. And 10 minutes, I can normally get a good 70 miles by the time I'm back again, and then I'm off I go again, because I don't want to be paying 85 pence per kilowatt hour when I pay, tuppence when I get home. But let's just go into the questions here. Are you doing a giveaway on my old springs? I am, Michael, unless there's a side deal we can agree on. We go. I wonder if cars will go down the route like a hybrid truck that runs off the overhead power lines when connected. Yeah,
like trains do that, don't they?
Yeah. Plug and P, 100%. Plug and P.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it on the plug. I mean, that could be.
I would never charge to 100%. Not on DC charging, that's for sure. Older Teslas clunk the thermal expansion when. Oh, that's what it is. Does anyone get that strange feeling when they're sat there charging, like your body's like maybe that's just Teslas. That's the perk. Because I've seen a few of those videos saying that, it's bad for you, the conductive charging. I don't know what the word is now, but it is apparently just a load of bollocks. Excuse my French. From other videos that I've seen and reading up on it. I generally plug in, check it's charging okay, then go to toilet, buy a coffee, then sit in the car for a short time until sufficient charge. Yeah, absolutely. All depends on where you're going, doesn't it? There's no real kind of standard. This is the thing with petrol versus EVs. EVs is more complicated. There is technology to make it easier, like in the Tesla and some of the EVs, to tell you how much you need to charge, where to charge, on your way somewhere, how long to be there, and then off you go again. Charging different temperatures makes differences, how fast it is. It's a lot more complicated. So I can understand why some people don't want to go for EV if they can't, if they don't want the complication. But you got to get used to it.
And you do. I mean, that's the thing. It's a bit like the cables that you're handling at home are not difficult things, especially if you go for. I mean, we've still got a socketed charger here. I don't find it too difficult getting the cable out the boot of the car and plugging it in. It's not too inconvenient, on that front. It's when you're handling a kind of a reasonably heavy, chunky fuel line. If you're plugging in if you're refueling a petrol or diesel car anyway. So it's not much heavier than that if you're on a rapid charger. The two are fairly similar. So.
And people do go on and on and on about the fact that EVs don't get the mileage that they're supposed to do on WLTP, but petrol and diesel cars are exactly the same. Like the Mazda petrol auto we've got. I mean, it's a 10 plate, but it says it will do 320 miles, but really it'll actually only do 265, and that still costs 60 odd quid. Whereas I can do similar sort of mileage in my Tesla, and it will cost me £4.67. We got something in there. Anyone here of a car accident outside Caffeine and Machine, unsure which one, if it was in bed for the other one, was an ICE vehicle that went off into a ditch? No, I've not heard of that. Oh, was that the F40?
No, I don't know. That was off the A5. That's not too far from Caffeine and Machine. One of the Caffeine and Machines is off up near Millbrook somewhere. So yeah, it's not too far from there.
Oh, just a bit of a heads up. Anybody that is in and around the Northamptonshire area, we've got EV meet at Gasoline and Juice, talking about Caffeine and Machine. So on the 2nd of Feb, Gasoline and Juice, it's on Chargeheads Facebook. I'll reshare it again. There'll be lots of modified Teslas there. Friends bringing an Ioniq 5N there. There'll be, bring along an EV, bring along whatever you want. We're just going to be chatting EVs and just perving over some EV stuff. And you can listen to my extremely gay exhaust, according to lots of people on Instagram. I've got about 600 comments saying it's gay, which is fine, and other things, which is lovely. But yeah, it does some fun noises other than V8s and things like that. So that's always good fun. But yeah, we've been met down there before. They've got some great sim racing. There's really good food there, really nice coffee. and there's plenty of space. So if anyone wants to meet up EV wise, gasoline and juice in Northants on the 2nd of February. I always feel relaxed when I'm done a long journey in my EV. My E208 is short range, but it lasts longer than my bladder. Yeah, petrol is faster, but you're rattled by the engine and tired. This is the thing. I don't understand. I mean, it might be an age thing, but I can't do more than 120 miles before needing to go to the toilet. That is for sure. What's your range, Kevin?
I don't know. I can have to do 200. Well, I mean, to be fair, I've had to stop, but I have gone 560 miles in a single charge. But yeah, we had to stop far more times than the car. So
Sam's like needing to piss a lot. He is a bit older, isn't he?
no, he's actually younger than me. So
is he? How old is he then?
A couple of years younger than me. So he's 40 something. I can't remember.
Okay. You hide it well, Kevin. What about yourself, Alex? What's your range?
In the e-Rifter on the motorway, 130 miles, 140 miles in the summer.
No, I mean your own range before you need to stop.
My own range. Realistically, I usually try and stop after a couple of hours unless I'm doing a marathon session. But I mean, to be honest, you drive quite a long way to run out of range in a lot of the modern EVs anyway. So it doesn't really. The range versus ice thing has been coming up a lot with the winter weather stuff, it's an interesting one to follow because there's pros and cons for both, aren't there? I mean, I know that short journeys in an EV in the winter, you've got the advantage of things like preconditioning and things. You're not sat out there trying to warm the car up and de-ice the windows and stuff. You come out, it's ready to go. It's a kind of an easy
massive bonus. That is a massive bonus, yeah.
But equally, when you lose range to cold weather, and then the issue that people don't understand is I think people come from ice and expect that if you're going to get your best range anywhere, it'll be on the motorway. And actually, for an EV, it's usually the other way around. It's usually better almost always better in town. You've got lots of regen opportunities and so on than it is on the motorway. So I think there's an adjustment in that as well, isn't there? So,
and on that, I've been, because the Hyundai lists what power you use for each device, and I've realised that most Hyundais have quite powerful heaters because the heater will take 7 kilowatts. So when I've seen it, it's actually to defrost the windows, it'll put 7 kilowatts of heat. When you think your average 3-pin plug fan heaters 2 maximum.
We don't have the range. Yeah, we don't have that. We haven't got a heat pump in the van, but we do. The heater in the van is incredibly effective. The Rifter, it's really, really good. It's the toastiest heater I think I've ever used in an EV. It's the only thing that I would say this takes longer to get there, because this is warmed obviously off the engine and the heater matrix, and it's a small cabin. It's like being inside a sleeping bag in the winter. It's lovely. But the
like you get sleep at the wheel, mate.
Very hot, very, very quickly, and it's really nice inside. But my God, does it chew through range when you're doing it?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned about the range side of things, because I did actually have a little look to see how many miles it took off the Tesla, and it wasn't actually that much. It was like 5 or about 5, something like that.
Preconditioning.
No, just like warming up from cold. But the mine has got a heat pump, unfortunately, but it is absolutely so nice to have that you can just literally just turn it on or just have it set for the morning. It's an absolute bonus. That person who crashed could have done with a all-wheel drive EV. Although saying that, I think a lot of people crashed the Ioniq 5N because it's too fast for them. So it's just probably
one of the spate of pictures I saw on the web of Ioniq 5Ns pointing different ways in hedges and stuff like that.
EV breakers may well have one. I'm not sure if I should have let that slip. To avoid the complications, we need all chargers to adopt plug and charge like Tesla, where the charger recognizes the EV and automatically bill the user. No faffing around apps and RFID cards, or simply just buy a Tesla.
Most other brands support plug-in and charge now, because I know all the new Hyundai stuff has got a plug-in and charge option.
Yeah, Volkswagen's going down that route as well, isn't it, with the new generation stuff? So.
Yeah, Michael's just he's just seen some of the comments on my Instagram posts. Yes, there were about 600, mate. So negative. I think it's best we turn up at some of these car clubs sometime. Absolutely, mate. I'll obviously go full V8 mode.
And I'm guessing you got hate from both sides on that as well. Not just you got EV hate and petrol car hate.
Hey, when someone offers you a free exhaust system for your car that you can do transformer noises, jet planes, and all sorts of fun, it's only going to help promote the channel and it'd be a bit of fun. And yeah, there's a lot of hate, but it's just, you know what? It's helped add followers, so you know, it's what it is. Not everyone's bag, but hey ho. Nor Tesla or electric cars. 3 hours is my max range, which tends to match my EV range. Perfect. There we go. There we go, people. So yeah, we talked a lot about general charging here, and it really just boils down to cost and convenience, doesn't it? Not only just the cost of putting it all in, which is obviously the main factor, because not only is there the infrastructure cost, but it's also, you know, what they charge you to charge in the first place. And they work this out, because I've seen it before where they have these spreadsheets. Unfortunately, it's not, you know, quite as good as the Dynamon EV transition tool, which is software based, not just on spreadsheets, assumptions and all that. They have this way of, okay, well, it's costing us this is the infrastructure cost, this is the ongoing cost. Okay, well, what will be the return on investment if we charge them 55p? And 1 pence can make a hell of a difference on how many years it takes to pay back. And I don't know if anybody else saw it, but Believe, which are my most local AC chargers, they've come down in price. They've gone from the heady heights of 55p, yes, for AC charging, down to 52, I think, or 51. So do you think we're on the turn for like people starting, or companies and CPOs starting to reduce their prices? Or do you think that's just going to be a race to the bottom and everyone's going to, yeah, I don't think they will personally, because I think it's the investors and everyone else will go out the window. Well, what are your thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah, well, I think the problem's going to be is if you're a race to the bottom, what happens is if you lose the support, because obviously they're going to have to cut corners somewhere, and will that hurt it? If you're charging 45p and the chargers never work, well, it's a bit pointless, isn't it? So people aren't going to use it there. So, and I mean, I think the other thing, as we've touched upon earlier, is the sudden vandalization of chargers with people taking cables. That all adds up to the cost we all pay, because they have to send engineers out, new cables and stuff. And I do wonder whether it's, you know, people say, is it theft or is it just vandalism? Because, you know, as we've talked about here, it's a very polarized debate. All it takes is a few people who don't like that side of the debate, and you can make it look like it's failing by just going and chopping some cables off. Or they just chucking them in a river somewhere.
I personally think it's vandalism. I genuinely do. That's my thoughts on it. I don't think that they're weighing in the copper. They might do just to get a bit of extra cash, but I think their main aim is vandalism. That's what I reckon.
Worth bearing in mind as well that all the public networks are rushing to meet new public charging standards since November, or will have been this last year. So there's a cost attached to that will be affecting, to an extent, new installations, but there also will have been a retrofitting cost that I think will have to be baked into those costs. So I think it's going to be a while before we start to see those come down, if at all.
Yeah. So Blackster Productions, he's charging every 3 days because of the colder weather, and he's got a new shape, long range. So 2280 is 240 miles. That's pretty good. I'm trying to think what mine is. 80, probably like 215, I think. Colin has mentioned automatic payments actually scare me. If anyone steals my car and it's hooked up automatically, not only do they have my car, but get a way of getting, well, to pay to get it away. It's a really good point, Colin, actually. Malcolm's mentioned, Colin, I guess you will be able to go into the account and cancel the payment authorization, which is makes sense. Theft of cables easily fixed. Leave them powered up. I'll only do it once. Yeah.
They won't live to tell anyone else about it though afterwards, will
they? No. Yeah. Then whoever, but it's a liability thing. Whoever did, if they were to do that, the other people that did it would go to jail, not the people that thieved it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Actually, seeing that comment on the new Tesla Model 3 has actually made me thought of something we haven't talked about, is what do people think of the new Tesla Model Y facelift?
It's a very good point, actually. I think it looks great. I don't know. Don't give me that Ray smile, Kevin. You know I'm going to say it looks great. Put a Tesla badge on it. It'll always look great, you know.
I'm not going to comment on what we could put Tesla badges on you'd like.
Offended him now. He's leaving. Walked off.
Right. What can we hang on. Just have to weld this Tesla badge to my head. Now I'm great. There we go. God, it's like something out of Star Trek, isn't it?
Or Ace Rimmer.
Ace Rimmer.
Arnold Rimmer, nice.
Yeah. So my Tesla water bottle, that much better with the Tesla branding. Yeah, maybe that could be a thing. You know, all the EV Tesla. That could be. No. Let's just move on. Let's move on. I've already embarrassed myself enough by having electric exhaust pipes on my Tesla. I don't need to go any further.
Have you seen the Model X in the States where it's got it's dressed up like a DeLorean, like a time machine, and it makes all the time machine?
That is really, yeah.
Doesn't it do the flames as well?
I think it does, yeah, and I can't remember.
Does it have an ability to like leave flame trails behind it?
It does every time. It's pretty. I think it was on one of the YouTube channels. What's his name? I can't remember his name. Andre Jerome's channel.
I mean, Doc Brown finishes the third film with kids, so I mean, I guess he needs more space than a DeLorean can offer. There you go.
This is true.
I do find it funny with some of the legislation around America and stuff. The fact they've only just allowed matrix headlights, but someone can leave flame tracks behind their car, and that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, going back to charging, I think legislation. You know, we're talking about stops for HGV drivers, that it doesn't count if they're charging, and the legislation around charge and everything else. It does feel that there's so much more that the government could be doing, even if they haven't got the budget. There's so much more that they could be doing around legislation to help the EV transition. It doesn't actually cost any money. They just need to start working through what's actually going to be best for it, which I believe includes mobility, electric, smaller electric devices. Not necessarily like trikey that's sat on the left looking sorry for itself, but like scooters and that sort of thing. I think there does need to be so much more with that. Although there are scooters out there that you can register and drive around, but yeah, it just seems like there's a great opportunity. I think it really could actually potentially kickstart the economy in the UK if they get these things right with scooters, with transport. You know. Well, rather than everyone just sat in their car, just, in queues all the time, where a lot of the local journeys could be done by different types of transport, which is more convenient, which is less expensive, and think about all the businesses that can grow off the back of it.
We're geared up around the car, aren't we? It's interesting that people seem to think that the big change is going electric. Going electric's not the big change. The big change is moving to those other forms of mobility and micro mobility solutions and the shared mobility solutions. Those are the big changes that are coming. Electric is kind of enabling us to do what we're already doing, just with a different fuel, isn't it? Yeah. With some other bits added on and some other bits that are slightly different, but it's a continuation rather than a complete disruption of the market.
Because you think that if the transport networks are there, people use them. I mean, how many of you would go into London and think, I'm going to drive through the middle of London? You wouldn't. You'd use the tubes because there's a transport net. All right, Tim just drives through the middle.
I'm never going to do it again. It was an absolute nightmare. An absolute nightmare. Oh, yeah, not fun. But yeah, absolutely. You'd use, public transport and stuff. I think it might be worth us talking about, just highlighting what we're talking about next week. Kevin, I'm going to let you take this one, just to highlight to everyone what we're going to be talking about next week.
So this is next week. We're going to be talking about a subject which a lot of EV people seem to hate, is plug-in hybrid. Is it kind of, because I've been in a plug-in hybrid, is it a waste of time, or is it a gateway to EV? Because you've got there's certain situations which we'll talk about next week where EV's not quite there yet, or the charging infrastructure is not quite there yet. So we're going to discuss what are the options, and I think that possibly that every emission-free mile is a good mile, but we'll see what everyone else thinks.
Now, that would be an interesting subject matter. And before we sign off, and thanks for everyone who's commented and been involved this week. But what's everyone up to this week, Alex?
The usual under wrap stuff mostly this week.
Hush, hush, secret squirrel.
Things I can't tell you about, but electric related. So I've got some quite interesting events on the coming up in the next few weeks, which I'll be able to talk a bit more about. But at the moment, yeah, this week I'm chained to my desk and I'm writing about some very interesting things that are not in the public domain at the moment, unfortunately.
Secret squirrel. Right. What about yourself, Kev? What are you up to this week?
Next week's a bit boring for me, just ordinary stuff. But the week after, there's some events, possibly some events that I'm going to the same ones as Alex. And the week after, there may be an interesting Hyundai that I'm testing.
Would it involve the letter N at all?
May do, but that would be telling.
Excellent.
And if it ends up in a ditch, he's going to change what I'm driving the week after because I'm driving the same vehicle. Literally exactly the same vehicle. We're going to swap over.
I know this is a couple of weeks away, but either of you going to the SMMT thing in Northampton on the 29th?
I'm on another event on that day. So.
Fair play. Well, what am I doing this week? I'm working hard, helping the EV transition of fleets. And this week, we've got the video going out of fitting the coilovers to Rusty, the Mountain Pass Performance ones, which I mentioned earlier in the feed. So yes, my old IBAC springs are probably going to be given as a free giveaway unless someone gives me a backhander quickly before I decide to put the video out. But yeah, looking forward to the video next week, and I hope it'd be great to have some comments on what do people think of the live EV podcast. Any other preferences? Should I change the colors? I just knocked it up about half an hour ago. So maybe it needs a bit of refinement. Future discussion topics. Yes, if anyone's got any preferences of what we talk about, it'd be great to get people's thoughts. So the Lost Welshman has mentioned EV tyres. That'd be a good one. Not a whole episode. That would be really sleepy. ZZZ. Recently had a hard sell to go cheap. What's that? Recently had a hard sell to go cheap. I resisted, but it's that actually the right choice. Efficiency versus grip versus noise, etc. Yeah, maybe we could talk about not just tires, but things that affect electric range that you've got control of on your used vehicles. So maybe tires, maybe weight in the car, maybe other tricks to improve efficiency. Whether that's what I like to do sometimes is wear a coat and a big hat and not put the heating on sometimes. Utilizing your heated seats, that sort of thing. But thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next week. Kevin, Alex, do you want to say see you later?
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in.